Soccer are currently winning 1-0, in case anybody is interested or cares. Just thought I'd point that out.
What grade is it? What is that? The high school, Marty?
High school girls. We like it when they're beating up on Pinecrest.
That's who it is.
Yeah.
Thank you for the update. Very important.
Very important. Yep.
Sports match.
Are you streaming that somewhere else, Marty, while we're streaming here?
They are streaming that on YouTube.
Are they? No
yes.
kidding, are they?
Yeah. For COVID reasons, understandably, it's an away game. They're over in media, so
okay.
I'm a proud father with a starting center back. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, good luck to your daughter. I hope they do well. Where are they on the season?
Not so great. They've lost to Conestoga and in a tough game, and then a double overtime heartbreaker. They lost to Radnor on Tuesday night. So.
Radnor. Nobody
Radnor.
Is it a regular season? Just are they having the same amount of games as they normally did, or are they kind of?
It's a little bit modified. It's much shortened and very heavy on the Central League. So they'll have a Central League tournament at the end, kind of like in an ACC tournament or a Big Ten tournament kind of feel to it. So there's no districts, there's no states this year. Things are pretty condensed, but hey, listen. At least they're playing. That's exactly right. And the seniors get a season, and I'm excited for them. And they've got some girls. I'll tell you what, Strathaven should be incredibly proud, not just of the players themselves, but the character of the young women and the leaders on that team. It's so apparent that I just feel again, remind you how lucky we are to live in this community, because the teachers and the administrators and the parents and just so much. When you see the young people grow up into, in this case, womanhood, it's just so impressive. I'm just blown away every time. So,
what grade's your daughter again?
She's 9th grader.
She's 9th grade. Okay, all right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you still got a few years left to enjoy. Hopefully, some more back to normal seasons. Hopefully.
That's right.
After 9th grade.
That's right. I hijacked the beginning, Dave. I apologize. So I don't know if our Mr. President is here not to.
He's trying to fend off the M&M thieves.
I think we're just waiting on Micah at this point.
Oh boy.
Probably stuck in traffic.
What's that?
I just made a snide comment. He must be stuck in traffic.
Yeah, exactly.
Matt, do you want to get us started on the agenda while we wait for Micah?
Sure, why not? All right. Let's,
You want me to
let's
text? I'll text him and see if he's having any issues connecting.
yeah, give him, text him and see if he texts you back in 30 seconds, and then
Sure.
nothing. What do you think? Start? Why not? Oh, it's Chief. It's not Micah. All right, why don't we get started? And we'll start with roll call, starting in ward order. You're on mute.
Very embarrassing for me. All right. Max Cooper, Ward 1, present.
Matt Garson, second ward commissioner.
Robert Scott, solicitor.
Mike Knapp, third ward. Thank you, Matt.
There he is. Good.
Our fourth ward commissioner, Kate McKenzie, will join us in a few moments.
Oh, okay. Stephanie King, Fifth Ward Commissioner.
And good evening again, everyone. Robert O'Connor, Ward 6.
Marty Malloy, Ward 7.
Marty, you're
Sorry, Marty Malloy, Ward 7.
there. We go. Awesome. Great. And apologies for my tardiness, folks. I had some kids getting into bed. Let's start off the agenda with the approval of minutes of September the 24th. Those were sent out, finalized, I believe, yesterday. I reviewed them. I did not note any errors in mine, but the rest of the board, any comments or corrections on the minutes?
My section looked good.
Okay. Hearing
Uh-oh.
we'll
Can't have connection issues.
move that we approve the who that was.
Micah, did you move? Your connection broke up.
Yeah, I think my kids may have put on Netflix instead of going to. Usually that's it, because it's not my phone or my wife's.
It only gets worse as they get older, Micah.
Oh, I can only imagine. We'll avoid any Zoom meeting jokes. So if there's no questions or comments, I will move to approve the September 24th minutes. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, I think I heard Marty first. At this point, any comments, questions, concerns? All right, hearing none. All those in favor vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? I don't believe we had any abstention. So that will go 6-0, Dave. Thank you. And next is public comment. So the phone number to join our YouTube/Zoom meeting is on the screen. There is a short, less than 1 minute broadcasts and calls. So we'll give a little bit of time for folks to call in. Dave, while we're waiting, anybody on the line waiting to give public comments before the meeting started?
I do not see anyone on the line.
Okay, so we'll give that sufficient time. Again, as with all these COVID meetings, if folks call in a little bit later, we'd be more than agreeable to having them speak and ask questions of the board. Let's move on to the solicitor's report, which looks empty, but I will still ask you, Bob, do we have a solicitor's report tonight?
It is empty. I have no report, thank you, tonight.
All right. Charles, anything from engineer's report?
I just looks like I have one thing on the agenda. It would be East Country Club drainage. It may be a repeat, but we had a meeting with the residents in that area that I thought went very well. We're in the process of putting together some kind of sketch plan to submit to some contractors to get some prices that we will go back to the residents and discuss.
Thank you, Charles.
Charles, I have your report up here if there's anything else you wanted to cover.
I think anything that needs to be covered is going to get covered later in the agenda.
Great, that was going to be my statement. I think there's a few things that pop up later, but I anticipate a pretty quick meeting this evening. All right, next we're on to Parks and Open Space with Commissioner Garcia.
Thanks, Micah. I'll take A and B, the first two items on my agenda together. We spoke at, I think it was last meeting about applying for the DVRPC Regional Trails Program, possibly for Furness Park. And we spoke about applying for the Pico Green Region grant to possibly do a project at Martha Burton Park. And we went back to the DVRPC and to Pico, and it doesn't look like if we put in an application that either grant will be successful. We have an open grant with Pico right now for Furness, and it doesn't sound like they'd have much of an appetite for a new grant until that one is closed out. And then with the DVRPC, we did touch on this a bit at the last meeting. They're really looking more for connectivity. And although Furness does allow some connectivity within the township to the train station and the library, it's not really multi-municipal connectivity. So my suggestion to the board would be that we don't pursue these two grant opportunities at this time. We already have a grant application in place for Furness. And if another good grant opportunity comes along for Martha Burton, certainly we can pursue it, or even possibly out of our parks capital budget. Maybe there'll be an opportunity to do some improvements over there in the future. Any comments or questions?
Matt, my only comment is sort of long-term planning for Furness and the completing of that trail to possibly extend the sort of commuter walk. I'm trying to think of the grant that was involved there in the initial stage. My question was, does this sort of foretell any difficulty or change our view about the availability of future grants to complete that trail? And maybe more for Dave as well.
I don't think so, but Dave, you can speak to that.
No, I don't think so either. This DVRPC Regional Trails Program is meant to connect the circuit trails, which unfortunately none of the circuit trails come through Nether Providence. But I do think we are still very competitive for future grant programs. As you'll recall, we applied back in July for the Greenways and Trails Recreation Program grant, which is what we got phase 1 through. So we're hopeful we can get phase 2 for that. I do think it's a very good project, just didn't fit for the DVRPC.
Thanks, Dave.
The next item on my agenda is the Furness Park extra work. We spoke about this a couple meetings ago about possibly having Public Works line a stone path kind of along the midsection of the park where it's just mowed as a meadow right now. And the thought was to do that next summer. That is still the thought. We've just been thinking that if we go forward with that project next summer, to potentially fund that out of the park's capital budget, and then using some remaining funds that we have from the county grant and the PICO grant for Furness, and using that towards our match for phase 1 of Furness. The benefit being a potential increase to, I guess, our fund balance of a couple $1,000s. Did I state that right, Dave?
Yeah, I think so. So up on the screen here, and Mike, to go to your earlier question about being competitive for grants, we've been fortunate to get 3 grants for this park alone. So I think we've done a pretty good job at showing how important this project is. So we got the grant for $200,000. Again, this is for phase 1, the work that was just completed. We got the $200,000 grant, we had the Green Region, and then we had the county. And then our initial expected match was going to be in the amount of about $49,000, or about $45,000 rather. But I figured we might be able to finagle the cost a little bit, because the DCED program will pay for some engineering costs, whereas the Green Region and county won't. So if we shifted some of the engineering costs away from our match and the construction costs into the Green Region and county, we might be able to bring our match down from about 40,000 down to about 20,000, 21,000. So that's a possibility. So we had that extra money left over that could have gone towards extending the program, or extending the path. But like Matt was saying, we might be able to use some of our capital funds for that. So it doesn't really need to be a decision point tonight, more just informational about something we could do in the future. And we're still tallying up some of our final engineering expenses.
Any other questions on that? And if not, that is the end of my report.
Okay, should I just go ahead and pick up? So Stephanie King, I'm gonna talk about the things on my community enhancement list here. So the Halloween decorating competition is already underway. I've seen a lot of good houses. There are no, a submission is not required, but if you want your house to be seen, send an email to amcook@netherprovidence.org. That's AMCOOKE at netherprovidence.org. And the judging starts next week, the week of, what is that, the 26th? Yeah. And if any of you commissioners would like to volunteer to assist with that, let me know. That would be great. And then trick-or-treating, we did talk about this at the last meeting. The township does not regulate trick-or-treating. But as you can see, there are recommendations from the Chester County Health Department. So residents are free to decide how they're going to participate. Again, just note that if you've been sick or in contact with anyone who has been exposed to COVID, or you have symptoms of COVID, please stay home. Make sure you wear face coverings even while trick-or-treating, and keep everything outdoors. And as a note, whatever you decide, please be sure to follow all the guidelines that are listed. And this is up on the township's website. Be safe and enjoy the season. And then leaf collection has begun. I heard them on my street this afternoon. They picked up the small pile I had out there. There is no set schedule, but they do try to come by once a week. It should be loose leaves only, not bags of leaves or bundles of sticks. And if you feel like your leaves have been out there for more than a week, just give the township a call and they'll try to get out there. And then again, we kind of spoke on this last meeting, the library board representative, the Furness Library needs a new library board representatives. They're gonna be making recommendations, but we're still waiting on some information. So hopefully that will come in the next couple weeks. And I just ran through that very quickly. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns on my agenda list?
I'm just curious, Stephanie or Dave, how are the submissions coming in for the decorating competition? Since this is the first year we've done it, has it been Have folks been emailing?
Yeah, I think last I heard, we had about 15 official submissions,
That's awesome.
but, just because people haven't submitted doesn't make them disqualified. So it's very possible there could be a surprise winner.
That's so great.
Okay, so that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So building and zoning just has two issues tonight, both kind of around Media Walk. The first, here, let me just pull up my summary here, is around pertaining to some muddy runoff with the rains last week. Dave and Charles checked it out, as well as the Delaware County Conservation District with a contractor. And they just offered some more guidance to avoid more muddy runoff in the future. And the contractor has been, fairly responsive and cooperated with these issues. Second one is the first escrow release. So anytime these developments take place, an escrow is provided, and that just ensures that the improvements are satisfactorily completed. And the first escrow release was completed. So we'll see a number of these throughout the project as progress continues to be made. Further escrows will be released. And that's all I have.
I think we're going to ask you to vote to approve that, right, Charles?
Oh, is that a vote?
Yes, it
I
should be.
thought that was informational.
Yeah. Would you please do a motion to approve the escrow release?
Sure. Does it just need to be a motion to approve the escrow release, or does there need to be any other language in it?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Sorry, 1 second. So I motion to approve the escrow release. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any comments or questions?
Do we need to have the amount of the escrow release? in the motion?
Sure. I mean,
Okay.
that's fine. And I guess I'd also expand it to say as recommended by the township engineer.
Okay, I'll try that. Attempt number 2. Motion to approve the escrow release of $133,352.65 as recommended by our township officials. Do I have a second?
I'll second it again.
Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome.
Any comments or questions again? Hearing none, everyone in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. I believe it's just 6-0. I don't believe Kate is here yet. And that's
Actually, Max, Micah had to jump off to reset his router, so currently it's 5-0.
okay. Thank you for that clarification, Dave. We still do have a quorum. We are functioning Board of Commissioners. All right. And I pass the torch on to Rob.
Okay, and good evening again, and a little bit of a curveball here. I'm used to being in Kate's spot here tonight. So anyway, I'm in the middle of the meeting, but anyway, 2 quick items on my agenda. First is the Public Works report. And I can find it here. So the Public Works report for the month of September 2020. During the month, the Public Works Department performed their normal monthly duties, including the following: maintenance of the recycling center, cleaning of inlets and culverts, routine maintenance of signs and intersections, pothole repairs, and lastly, routine maintenance of the township vehicles. In addition to that, the Public Works Department performed the following. They received 92 PA1 calls. All sewers were marked within the township for contractors who are working here. The Public Works Department received 4 emergency sewer calls during the month of September. The Public Works Department mulched all of the playgrounds throughout the township. They installed a berm on East Country Club Lane. They began the fall sewer cleaning. They painted stop bars at the stop signs on Manchester and Ridley Creek roads. They cleaned the brush up on Harvey Road. They did work on Devon Lane for sewer stabilization. They also did the Park Ridge outfall repair. And lastly, they did cleanup at Leaper Park, including trees and debris. With that said, the only other item I have, I think, is informational only, and that is pertaining to a situation over in Stephanie's ward, the Pine, I believe it's Stephanie's ward anyway, the Pine Road sewer line break. Unfortunately, there was a sewer line issue over at Pine Road this past Friday. The Public Works Department went out very shortly after the incident occurred and was able to deal with the issue. The following day, on Saturday, a contractor was brought out to assess the situation. They were there on Saturday and Monday, as well as Tuesday, to do repair work. In addition, all proper authorities were notified. As of now, we do not have a bill for the cost on this matter, but we will end up, I understand it will be pretty expensive since the contractor had to spend so much time there. And in addition, it'll be expensive probably as well, because we had to run a bypass pump on the generator for several nights, which had to be checked periodically, approximately every 6 to 8 hours, which of course required us to incur overtime with the Public Works Department. We should know the full cost of this situation by the upcoming meeting, and these costs will be paid for out of the sewer fund. So with that said, I don't believe I have anything further. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I don't actually think this is a question for you, Robert. More of when we get that full cost. I think it'd just be helpful for some of the newer commissioners like myself to see what the year has been in terms of sewer costs. If we can, Dave, I guess, if you wouldn't mind putting that all together, just to give us a sense of how out of scope this was, or how unfortunately this is something that, you know, it happens regularly and we might need to take up as more of an issue in 2021.
Sure, we can put that together. This is probably one of the larger issues we've had in a while. We did have one earlier this year, a couple months ago, that was a more minor issue that was caught before there was any sewage issues in the ground. And so this is a little bit out of the norm, but we have had some expensive ones in the past. Charles might be able to give us a little bit more history too. I know we had one on East Rose Valley Road several years ago that was expensive. So we'll tally that up and kind of show you where that goes over the years.
That'd be really helpful. Thanks.
If you're going to do that tally, can you also put in the expense of the payroll for sewer specific public works, as well as the capital and maintenance costs or annual carry costs of the sewer truck, please?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Micah. That's really, I mean, that rounds out exactly the kind of stuff that I think we need to be aware of for right now and start thinking about, because I'm just thinking about those residents on Pine. 3 days is a lot, and having it be that massive, I can only imagine the disruption that it made for those residents, but also it makes me worry about the entire network, which I'll talk about a little bit, but it's a big responsibility. We should know what we've got on our hands.
Okay, and if nothing else, that's the end of my report, and I think you're
Robert, just one more item on the report.
yes.
It was initially just going to be on the bills list, and then the issue came up related to the Suker and Sons. So, Bob, do you want me to talk about this?
Yes.
Or
No, I'll do it if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, you may recall we got contacted by Suker's bonding company saying, pay us, not Suker. And Suker told us, pay my supplier, not the bonding company. I told them both, we're not paying anybody till you both agree how it gets spent. They did agree and submitted a contract to us whereby they both are agreeing the township should direct everything owed to Suker's supplier, whose name is Alan Myers. It's an asphalt or concrete supplier. But Dave caught this. I wish I could take credit for it, but Dave gets the credit. We have not gotten our maintenance bond from Suker yet. So we should not be releasing the retainage. The final bill, you always hold back 10%. and we should not be releasing that until they give us our maintenance bond. So we're going to ask you tonight to approve this. It's called what was it called? A third party check agreement or
A
check
joint
payment
check
agreement. But conditioned on us not releasing the retainage until we get the maintenance bond in place.
Can these guys get a bond at this point if they've got their bond company collecting on their last deal?
That's a good question. And if they can't, we will pay over
MOC
everything.
or-
We'll pay over what we owe other than the retainage, and we'll keep that retainage for the 18 months.
Exactly.
I gotta imagine when you have a bond called within 1 year, and that's probably not the only one, that they may have a little difficulty getting the maintenance bond in place at a reasonable number.
Yeah.
Do we
Charles,
need to move on that? Do we need to move on that tonight, Bob?
Yeah, please. So I'm going to ask that you that you have a motion to approve it, but conditioned on us getting the maintenance bond or holding back the retainage.
So is it motion to approve? Are there any payments one way or the other? I'm just trying to recall the
Yes,
line.
you're going to be paying the base amount, which is in the 100. What was the range? Like approximately 150,000. And regardless, that'll get paid over. The retainage we will pay once they have given the maintenance bond over to us, and if they haven't, we'll keep that as a maintenance bond for 18 months.
All right, so I'll move that we pay Suker and Sons the amount owed, which is about 150,000 or so, conditioned upon the issuance of a maintenance bond or our withholding a retention. Does that sound about right, Bob?
It's almost right. I'm asking you to approve the agreement.
Gotcha. So I move to approve the agreement to resolve the fighting between the bond holders and the suppliers,
Right.
and approve the agreement. And with that comes a payment to that agreement, but it's also conditioned upon
Right.
our either
On us.
receiving a maintenance bond from Suker and Sons or our retaining an equivalent,
10%.
the 10%.
Yep.
All right. Can I get a second?
Second?
Any questions or comments?
so just a quick comment here. Or a question for Charles, I guess. How quickly do you think they could get us the maintenance bond? Do you think this is something that could be provided on Friday or Monday? Or are we talking a couple weeks?
Without any issue, the maintenance bond is generally in a few days.
Yeah, Dave, I would tell you that's a 24-hour turnaround. I think I was kind of joking, but their issue, if you've got a bond called,
There's an issue.
you're going to have problems.
Because I think what we would ideally do is just hold on to the full amount until we have that maintenance bond. But if we're talking a long period of time, then we will,
I'll work with their counsel on that.
okay,
Yeah, and at least keep that retainage of 10% as our leverage. They just may be incapable of any bonding company at a reasonable number backing their promises at this point. All right, Dave, so are you comfortable with us paying that minus retainage or the maintenance bond?
Yep.
All right, so did I get a second on that
You
motion?
did. Robert did.
Robert, I was gonna say Bob would be.
Sorry,
But you're
confusing.
looking at
Robert
like-
got you.
All right, so any further questions or comments on that motion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that passes 6-0. All right, with that, I believe we're on to infrastructure with Commissioner Marty Malloy.
Yes, sir. So there's a couple things in A. This is mostly updates though for A and B, so I'll handle them pretty quickly. And Max, if you can be on call here. So in terms of the traffic calming, this is both with Spring Haven, and then I'll also just mention something about Surrey Lane up in Kate's ward. Currently the country club is not interested in creating a one-way entrance or changing any of the pattern of the traffic right there. But they are interested in a stop sign and other visual elements that have been discussed, and they are planning on contributing $1,000 from the club, as well as raising the rest of the money from the neighborhood to do that. Max, does that capture it pretty much about where we stand right now on Spring Haven and that area?
Yeah, 100%. There's just a little bit of background if anyone's just listening to this for the first time. There was kind of a back and forth on this, where the initial proposal held some speed bumps. The residents were very much against that. They felt it would change the character of the neighborhood. And so we went back to the drawing board and we proposed to the country club perhaps making their entrance a one-way, and that would, eliminate any traffic that leaves it. They were initially considering it, but on further kind of debate, they decided against it, as they're worried about kind of changing traffic patterns out the other side of their club. And so all the elements that everyone could basically agree on were this proposed visual element where it says proposed gateway here, as well as a proposed stop sign here. And we feel like if we do this in a stepwise way, kind of since everyone at least has consensus on these, it'll probably slow traffic somewhat. And then, if issues around speeding in the neighborhood continue, we can always reassess it at a later date and consider further elements kind of down the road. But we have consensus on these, so we feel like, if we have consensus and the country club's gonna, pay for it, then there's no reason to kind of hold it up.
Great. We'll look for continued updates there. In terms of Surrey Lane, we've talked about this a number of times. We're going to be doing a traffic study for Surrey Lane. And just as importantly, and related to the reason these go together, is that it's residents stepping forward and saying, this is something that we'd like to do and we're willing to contribute. But we had agreed as a board that we need to draft a document that could spell out what that process would look like if residents are going to be contributing to traffic calming measures, especially those that don't rise in the matrix, the traffic matrix that we do. So for Surrey Lane, traffic study still needs to be performed, and we will be drafting a document that could spell out that process.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about this some more, and it does concern me a little bit. I think that it needs to be clear that this is the township's judgment's got to govern at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And if you determine it's not working, you need to be able to pull them out and not be refunding any money. And, they may not find that appealing, but I really think you need to reserve that discretion. You can't be kind of delegating the governmental function to people who are willing to put up money. It's just problematic.
It's absolutely problematic on a lot of fronts. I agree with you. And there are, I'm sure Chief Splain could talk to us all evening about reasons why certain areas can't have certain traffic calming, and we, based on what residents want on a particular road. So I think that's why we need to draft this document, so that we can really put our minds around all of this. So I appreciate your comments, Bob. Anyone else have any other thoughts though before I move on?
I was starting to draft something. I haven't gotten super far, so I apologize. But whenever I have that drafted, Bob, I'll share it with you. And
yeah, and Dave, I often find it helpful just to shoot some bullet points back and forth if you want to do that.
Sure.
Before we get too far, let's do something like a one-page quick sort of ideas, make sure we're on the same page.
That sounds good.
And then turn it into something bigger.
That's wonderful. So the second update is the East Rose Valley sidewalk. A meeting was held on September 30th outside, socially distanced. We've been receiving feedback. We're incorporating that feedback that is ongoing into the design. Mr. Catania, I wasn't sure if there was anything else that you wanted to mention specifically about East Rose Valley Road at this time.
No, we're still in the process of incorporating those comments from the neighbors, trying to address as many as we can, present that revised plan at a later date.
I actually have a question, and maybe this is better for Charles or maybe this is better for Dave. I know there were kind of two meetings. I was at one with Charles on the eastern kind of edge of where the project would be, and those questions were primarily around drainage. It sounds like you've addressed those. On the western end where Dave was, there are questions related to a whole number of issues, and I'm just curious, Dave, if you've heard any more from those residents and kind of what those conversations have been.
We've not heard much more from the residents. Some of the concerns were around the liability, taking on the liability of having the sidewalk in front of their house. And will it create additional liability if someone, say, trips and falls on the sidewalk? And then also questions about the ongoing maintenance of the sidewalk, who will be responsible for plowing and shoveling during winter weather events. We've also had questions about trees and bushes. There are some locations where trees or bushes will have to be removed or relocated. And, in situations where a tree or any sort of planting needs to be removed, we will replace them. Unfortunately for some, they're not crazy about having a mature tree be removed and replaced with a younger tree. So that's another concern that we've heard. But since that meeting, I've met with one or two residents just looking at particular issues for their properties, but nothing besides that.
Thanks, Dave.
I would like to take this time to welcome Commissioner McKenzie, who I just saw pop up on my screen. Hello. So this next bullet point is an item on my agenda is around the pollutant reduction plan. We've been accepting comments from the public for almost a month now, and we're coming up on the end of that public comment period on October 25th, 2020. Charles, I don't know if you're able to give us a bit of a presentation on the PRP. I'm already out of my depth, so I would love to be able to turn that over to you.
I'll provide a brief summary. On this call is Christian Chuni from our office, who basically handles most of this work in our office. But I know this, I'm going to be a little repetitive on this. The township has a permit for stormwater discharge through a federal program called the NPDES MS4 program. That program is administered by the state through the Department of Environmental Protection. The permit, this is actually be the third permit cycle. It's a 5-year permit cycle. We are starting the third permit cycle. And this year has been different. This permit cycle has been different than the previous two in that the new permit cycle is literally going to require construction projects to be administered or implemented, is the right word, implemented by the township to address pollutants that are being discharged into the streams. They call it the pollutant of concern is sedimentation. So we would need to address removal of sedimentation. And in order to do that, we were obligated to prepare this pollution reduction plan, which the draft of which has been done. It was advertised in the Daily Times for a public comment period that opened September 25th and will expire October 25th. We'll have this brief presentation tonight, and then we'll submit this plan to the state for consideration. Little background. The township is divided into 4 watersheds, and through the protocol that DEP has provided, if you can believe this, the sediment load is about 400 tons per year coming out of the township. 400 tons. Picture a dump truck you see had, one of the larger dump trucks has about 20 tons in it. You do the math and you see it's an awful lot of material being dumped into the streams. Under the plan, we're required to take 10% of that out in the 5-year period, which means we have to remove 40 tons. And in order to do that, they've established, they call them BMPs, best management practices. They're stormwater facilities meant to address the discharge of sediment into the streams. And they kind of have a hierarchy of certain projects are better suited than others. So we had talked previously about the stream restoration, which has an extremely high removal of sediment per dollar, so to speak. Infiltration facility has like a 95% effectiveness. A rain garden or a bio retention system has about a 55%, and it goes down from there. So obviously, one of the things that we will do in the final implementation of an MS4 program for the township would be to look at the available projects and almost develop a cost-effective chart, $1 per pound removed, so that the commissioners then will be able to make an educated decision on which projects should be done and which projects shouldn't. This PRP that's being developed does not require that monetary evaluation. What we need to do is we need to provide potential BMP projects. So just briefly, I'll go through a couple of them. So in the Crum Creek watershed, we're looking at on Park Ridge Drive, we had that outfall that was required to be addressed a few years ago. We're going to further that project by creating some infiltration facilities in that area. Potentially can remove about 7. Yes.
Sorry, real quick. If there's a page I should be on, could you let me know?
Kristen, I have a summary in front of me.
Oh, okay.
I should have given that to you. Yeah. Kristen, can
No
you
problem.
direct them to a page?
Yeah,
I think there's maps.
Yeah, there's I don't know the page numbers off the top of my head. But I think we're getting into existing BMPs, the page you are on now. If you keep going down, yeah, existing, keep going down. Planned
Okay, there you go.
BMPs, I mean, you're gonna, yeah. Yeah, that's a list of what we have right now.
So then
Planned.
I can skip a lot of the talk then. Here's a list of the potential projects that are listed, and you can see that, like for example, in the Crum Creek watershed, our target would be about 17,500 pounds. By implementing a series of projects, we can remove about a little over 20,000 pounds. Now, obviously that's an extra, more than we need to. We're going to recommend that we actually add projects that are going to exceed the threshold or the requirement, but over the 5-year period, we're not obligated to implement them. We're only obligated to meet the minimum requirements. If, for example, we estimate a reduction of 1,000 pounds for a certain project, and when we actually implement the project, it only ends up being 750. We do not have to go back and update the PRP. So as long as we have them in this PRP, there's no reason for us to go back through this process again. So you'll see we've done a little bit of contingency in this list of projects. So in a nutshell, that's it. I mean, there's a couple of things that will accept public comment. Even as we reviewed this in-house, in the Crum Creek, we saw an opportunity to add some facilities in Leaper Park that we'll add to this plan before it's submitted when we submit the final to the DEP.
Charles, if we discover a project after the PRP has been submitted, can we still get credit for that if that's not here?
I believe you'd have to go back and amend your PRP in order to do so.
Yes.
Charles,
All right.
I want to say thank you, and thank you to Kristen as well.
No thanks, because wait till you see the dollars that go with this.
No, I mean, I appreciate that, but I appreciate your organizing this for us and your staff working on it on a Thursday night at 8 o'clock at night.
I will just add, if there's any questions or comments about it, discuss it now, because that's also a piece that needs to be included when I submit the plan. So I will record any comments and address anything that needs to be addressed.
I guess one question I have as I'm wrestling with this a little bit, Kristen, is I know that we're going to be getting, and I love the way that this is organized, if I'm understanding it correctly, that we'll be looking at how much is reduced per watershed, and then also per amount and the effectiveness, et cetera. How were these particular projects identified is my first question. And then my second question is there a factor that's taken in when identifying these projects, not just about cost, but also about the types of pollutants that might be found in the sedimentation that would be removed? So sort of like we may not get, if it's based on tonnage, we might not get credit for the fact that we're removing, because of the development that exists in one particular area, we're removing a certain type of pollutant over another. So the first question is, how are these identified? And the second question is, is there a way to capture that other sort of type of pollutant?
I'm just trying to record the comments for a second. Just bear with me.
Yeah, take your time.
I'm going to answer it backwards because I can answer the second half. Kristen maybe answer the better half, the first half. When they're talking at sediment loading, it's not necessarily, the muddy water we saw coming off the Wallingford Avenue development. Mm-hmm. It's a volume of water that's entering the stream that's creating stream bank erosion. So some of these projects that are being implemented is actually to reduce the volume of water, which then, consequently reduces ongoing stream bank erosion. We're only, and I said, under this permit cycle, we're only obligated to address the sediment load. There are obviously a whole nother, a larger realm of pollutants that need to be addressed, if that's part of your question, but they're not under this permit cycle. I assume that in future permit cycles, we may be looking at phosphorus or nitrogen, stuff that we see in lawn fertilizers and so forth, but we'll address that when we're required to.
Yeah, Maury, to give you the layman's understanding of it is reducing the pollutants are important, but reducing the sediment that goes downstream is sort of the top priority, and maintaining that schedule and knocking down sufficient amounts. And looking at this now, I'm going to look it over more, as well as think about other projects that are potentially out there. I know we've got a lot of issues with culverts and drain pipes that with a small radius that shoot water out, as well as any development that we have going on. But I'd like to see us obviously in a better position with the reduction and ahead of schedule. And Dave, I'm sure that you've been speaking with Charles, where all this lines up with our projects and our grant requests.
Yeah, so we've been keeping this in mind as we've been doing grant applications. In fact, it's kind of been the basis for a few of them. For example, the stream bank restoration at Gooley Park, we applied for that. We were awarded funding for that because of the initial pollutant reduction plan. Kristen or Charles, is this considered draft 2 or something, or the final draft? There was an initial draft a couple of years ago, right?
Yes, there was an initial draft. DEP came back with multiple comments about mapping, and so it's been through at least, I think we originally submitted it a couple of years ago. DEP had comments that we addressed, and then this should be the final draft if it's approved by DEP. But I've addressed most of the comments, so I'm not expecting many comments at all, if any.
Don't jinx it.
Yeah,
exactly. We've been through it, so I think we're. The irony of it, well, it's not that. When this first came out, DEP held training sessions, and many of us went to these training sessions. And the core of this whole PRP is the mapping that Kristen's speaking of. So the first order of business was to identify all the storm sewers where they discharge to, and then you develop the areas. Then you kind of outline the areas that are sending water through those outfalls, and then you identify a study area. So unfortunately, the guidance that they gave us, we actually have the training manuals in our office. When it came time to submit these, the target moved. So we weren't the only ones that were caught in this, but many of the local consultants had the same issue, that we designed it according to the training manuals, but they revised them, after plans were submitted. I never answered the first part of Marty's question, I don't think. So the opportunities were basically just, we're looking at mapping, and our first place to look would be municipal properties, obviously. Let's look at the parks. Let's look at any other open space that we have. Projects that have multiple benefits. They might solve a drainage issue, but then we can get some MS4 credit out of it. And it's simple as that. We're just looking at maps and identifying potential areas.
And if I could just add too, that we also look at efficiency. So when DEP came out with their guidance, they came out with a list of the BMPs to consider, but they weren't all high efficiencies. Some BMPs could be as low as like 30% or 50% efficient. So we try to pick BMPs with a higher efficiency, like an infiltration trench is like 95% efficient. So we can kind of get more sediment reduced per BMP than if we picked another one. So I try to pick them based on the efficiency. And then stream bank restoration, we picked that also because you get a lot of credit. They call it's bigger bang for the buck. So it could be more cost efficient, and you get a very large sediment reduction. So you wouldn't have to go back and do other smaller BMPs. You can just tackle stream bank restoration in some creeks. So that's the other reason we picked a lot of these BMPs.
That's awesome. Thank you.
And quick sort of ignorant question. Can we or have, I'm sure that our zoning hearing and our planning boards are aware of our reduction requirements. I wonder if we share some of the targets and issues off of the public lands and onto private, which is probably certainly most of these stream banks. If we, can look at that or continue to look at that reduction of sediment in plans and projects that are not as right, and looking to either encroach on those waterways or even just the property that has them.
There's nothing in the regulations that say that the BMPs that the township gets credit for have to be on public lands. So we could get into some private-public partnerships in order to gain some credits for the township.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we brief our zoning hearing more than but also the planning in the needs of the township, so that we're always looking to make we're always looking to help our residents out when they're looking for a variance, but that if we could make some of this reduction, if we can, on little private parcels, even if it's a dime or a nickel here and there, if we just make our commissions aware of those reduction requirements.
Charles, does DEP require an easement on a private property project that counts towards your PRP credit?
I want to say the answer is no. I think we've asked that question. Kristen, is that correct? I was surprised, but I think that was the answer.
Easements?
Yeah.
As far as some type of easement or some type of agreement that, this BMP is being installed on private property, and
Yeah.
What guarantee is there that that is going to continue to be allowed to be on the private property and then continue to function as intended?
Yeah, so there's the eastern part of the state, I'm sorry, of Delaware County. There's a collaborative with a lot of different municipalities, and they've had projects like small rain gardens on private property. And I believe they do have some sort of small agreement with them. So the private landowner has to maintain a rain garden or other type of BMP. They can't just let it sit and not work efficiently. So I believe it's nothing really extensive, I believe, but I think there's something that says along the lines that they have to at least maintain BMPs on their property.
Okay.
Thank you, Val. That would make sense. Something that runs with the land on the title. But, I think about so many of these watersheds. It's probably 95% of the property surrounding them are private, and are regularly come up before our zoning hearing and planning commissions to whether they're extending that lot line or they're doing adding on an addition that may require approval. These are small pieces, but maybe something to consider because, we certainly have projects. We have enough in Sappets right now that are going to do a good deal. But even just if you follow that creek down past the new Wallingford Ave project, you're running all onto private land the whole way until it runs into Ridley Creek, essentially. Just a thought, Dave, for our zoning hearing.
Sure. I think it would be a very good thing for our planning commission for them to look at, as well as, because they'll be the ones that will be reviewing any sort of development that's taking place. One of the questions that I feel like I'm always asking Charles with the PRP, because as Kristen noted, the stream bank restoration seems to be one of the more higher efficiency projects, I think. And I think that's why we've aimed to do some of those projects. And I think there's a requirement that the length be at least 200 feet. Because there's been times where I've said to Charles, like, hey, can we get credit for this? And like, no, it's not a long enough project. So that's something Charles has had to remind me a couple of times, and limits some of the potential projects I think we could have done just because the stretches are too short.
Well, if the minimum requirement, I believe, is 100 feet, and you have to do both sides of the stream too. So, other than that, regarding lengths, I believe it's just 100. But again, it's on both sides, so it is like 200 total.
Cool. All right. Before we give our huge thanks to Kristen and Charles for that, was there any additional questions or concerns or discussion? This was awesome, by the way. This is really cool stuff. So Kristen, you're welcome anytime. You want to come by and educate us further on everything that you're doing, man.
Of course.
This was really, I really appreciate, because I think this is the real, this is some really heavy duty important work that might go unnoticed, but is hugely important to the township. So thank you. And definitely thank you for coming on and staying on this meeting for so long and sharing your expertise.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I always like when people get really excited about this, because sometimes I just get the blank look and people have no idea what I'm talking about. And I've had to go, and so long and short of it, sometimes DEP doesn't always identify streams that, local governments know that they're there. But DEP doesn't always identify smaller tributaries. So I've had to go out and identify and look at stream flow to make sure it meets DEP's requirements. And, I've gotten talk with a lot of the local residents, and a lot of them so excited about this, which really makes me happy.
Yeah.
So it's not
For
just
sure.
you guys. I'm really happy about all the locals really getting excited too. So,
Well, excellent. Thank you so
yeah, of
much
course.
for that. And I think we're in good shape because Mr. Charles keeps us on point and educates us every time I get around him. I know I speak for a lot of the commissioners around that. So my last point today is the sewer study that we had talked about. Dukes had recently finished a sewer study in my ward, the 7th ward. We are pending those results. I haven't seen them yet, but I'll double check with Charles.
You're going to see some preliminary data, I believe. And maybe that should say sewer study phase 1 is completed. The acoustic testing and the manhole inspections have been completed. We call it the ion micro detection, the level sensors that are in some manholes, that's still ongoing. They're trying to capture a couple more storms. That should be done shortly, and we'll have a report by the end of next month.
That's awesome.
So what you're seeing here is this is preliminary information and the results of the aforementioned acoustical testing of manholes, and they do this really nicely in that it's color coded, it's very visual, and it's very easy to follow. So the colored circles on the map are manholes. The colored lines are the pipes that connect the manholes. So from the manhole inspection, we didn't get very good news. Green, give you an idea on the manholes, green is good, orange is fair, red is not good. Poor, you might even say. I don't see any green on there. I see half dozen or so reds, and all the others are yellow. They're in the process of preparing the summary of those. We'll put together a cost estimate of what's going to take in order to rehabilitate those manholes. So that's the manhole inspection. The acoustic testing. The purples, I didn't mention that. The purples are basically manholes that they couldn't find at their first go around. Public Works has since gone around and marked those manholes. The Dukes came back last Saturday, got the information on the pinks or the magenta, whatever color you want to call that. We'll have that report shortly. The colored lines then are the acoustic testing. And basically, I think I mentioned this before, all it is, they put a sound wave in the upstream manhole. They have a device that hears the sound at the lower end manhole by some, I'm going to call it magic. They know that a certain amount of sound should get through the pipe. Again, same kind of color coding. Green is good. Yellow is fair. Red, they don't use red. They use white for some reason. White is failed. So in this part, you can see we fared a little bit better. And you can actually see green in there. Two concerning points are, if you look down, can you zoom in at all, Dave? To Christian and is that Morris? Yeah, we have two white sections there that need further evaluation. They failed the acoustic testing. I also, and I didn't send it to David, but I also have some preliminary information from the eye trackers, the level sensors, and they actually fared fairly well in the whole upper section, like the section that Dave's scrolling to now. That all passed. That all came out green. That was good. The lower section by Christian, that same bottom section failed. And what concerns me with that is the problem may be in Sheffield Drive. So next week, the sales rep from Dukes is going to come out. I'm going to meet him. I'm hoping Daryl can be there and Dave or anyone else is invited, by the way. He's going to run just as a courtesy, run the acoustics testing on those couple manhole sections below that point, just to rule out whether we need to incorporate that into our study area or not.
And so just to clarify that, Charles, this illustration is all flowing down through this lower section where we see that what the white line is the outflow from that whole sewer system.
All right. That's the whole study area.
And so we're looking at like a possible bottleneck there on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
And we don't know what that. I mean, this the kind of the beauty of this, the program that we implemented is now, if we did the old fashioned way, we would basically be cleaning and videoing every one of these storylines. Now we know that we don't necessarily need to worry about the green ones. We can concentrate our efforts into those white ones. If we had red ones, we would concentrate in the red ones, and then we would see what we find, and then we would go to the yellow category. So it just allows us to more efficiently assess the system. So we'll take a better look at those areas down there.
So this is definitely not a full A+ passing grade, but considering that this is not even close to half of one ward, right? So this is one section of one ward. If we saw this much white and yellow across the township, which is where my mind immediately went, I'm starting to feel like I'm having a panic attack. Is that too extreme a concern? Sorry.
Politely, yeah. Remember Jesus. We talked about before, there's a lot of tools in our toolbox in order to evaluate things. We can't just take one piece of it and start to panic that we're going to have all these problems. We're going to look at these areas and just better look at these areas. For example, that white made nothing. That white there may simply be roots in the pipe. And treating roots is a relatively inexpensive operation.
Okay.
We have a program we have now. I think it costs us I want to say under $2 a foot every 3 years to do root treatment. So you take a 300-foot section, $2 a foot, that's $600 every 3 years. It's not a big cost.
Okay.
So that's no need to jump yet.
Got it.
Yes.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Right.
Any other questions or thoughts on this scary map? As we get more details, I think they'll have more questions. But I think that's it, Mr. President, for my report for tonight.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Malloy. And that is, we're on to Public Safety Committee report with me. The very short agenda for public safety. The first is the 8 can't wait document and use of force procedures. This is just a restatement of a notice from the past several meetings. We posted on our website a diagram of police procedures in Nether Providence as compared to some of the more salient issues in national policing as to where we are as a police department, as well as we posted our use of force protocol, so that we all invite all of our residents to read both documents, a sort of summary chart, as well as the detailed use of force. And if you have any questions or concerns or comments about what we're doing, we welcome those. But we want to make sure that that we're transparent in what we're doing. And I will take a moment to note that it was in last week's Swarthmore on the front page, bottom section, there was a conversation between some residents in Swarthmore and the borough's commissioners, as well as their police chief, about what their procedures were. And the conclusion there from those meetings was, hey, let's post these on the website and let's have a conversation about them. And it made me feel really good about what we're doing here in Nether Providence, as well as what the chief is doing with our police department in terms of being as transparent as we can be and giving as much information to the public that we can, so that we can have a dialogue about it. And I think not patting ourselves on the back, but we certainly want that transparency and we want to have that exchange. So if there's any questions that residents have at all, please ask us. Hard questions are great. The harder, the better. We want to have those conversations. The second item is just a notice of the replacement vehicle, new police Dodge Durango. I believe this was delivered yesterday, and I'll give this to the chief to briefly explain the new vehicle, and we can certainly look over the vehicle replacement schedule as well.
The 2020 Dodge Durango was delivered yesterday. It was taken to the shop today to be upfitted, and it's our hope within the next week to 10 days it'll be on the street and operational, and we will retire car 6 and put that up on GovBids.
Thank you very much, Chief. And that concludes my report, and we will go to Finance Administration with Commissioner Kate McKenzie.
The best thing to say for last, right? First item on the agenda is the Ordinance 821. That is the police pension restatement and drop provisions. It's really nothing to do tonight. There are comments still outstanding from the FOP, and I understand that we're waiting on our council to get back on that. The next item is the budget draft timeline and then liquid fuels budget. So with respect to the draft budget, just a brief update, the only material change that's been made since the last time we talked about the budget is to include the healthcare costs. I think that's the non-uniform healthcare costs, right, Dave? You can nod yes or no.
Yes,
Yes.
they're both the actuals for both union and non-union are in there.
Non-union. Okay, so we have, and I think we had alluded to that last time, that we were expecting that to actually bring the, so sort of bring expenses down, and it did. So with that, at this point, the way the budget sits right now, we're at a 4.96% tax increase. But like we said, that is sort of in flux, and we're waiting for other fixed costs to come in, and then we'll do our due diligence and go through the other expenses and fine tune them. But just sort of another added point of comfort that we're doing well with the budget and making some good headway. With respect to the budget timeline, another, I think, positive thing, Dave and I talked, and I think everyone needs a little bit of a breather, and we're going to cancel the meeting on the 29th, the planned budget meeting. We're going to keep the November 5th on the calendar for now, but we'll keep everyone updated as we progress and see what comes in and what we need to talk about. So in exchange for not meeting on the 29th, we're going to go quickly through the liquid fuels budget. I think David is going to do that, since they're into the details on that a lot more than I am.
And we have David here on the call with us. David, you did put a little bit of time putting this together. Would you like to speak to it a little bit?
Sure. I think this is probably one of the easiest budgets to do, because a lot of it has to do with the fuel tax that we get charged when we go to the gasoline pumps to pump our gas, and the state roads that we take over and maintain. We then end up getting the PA liquid fuels tax money every year. And you can see this year we collected a little bit more than last year, which is a good thing. And then we use that for road resurfacing. And sometimes we use it for other kinds of things, such as traffic supplies, repair of traffic signals. We even go into buying some equipment sometimes, and then some of the equipment needs to be repaired. So just like the general fund, this budget in liquid fuels or motor license budget has to balance revenues and expenses every year. It's pretty stable year to year, because we're not adding roads to it every year. And Dave, go ahead and please comment more on I guess,
Sure,
the history of it, and if you could.
Sure. We've already been given the notification for 2021 what the liquid fuels revenue will be. So this number that's in there at 390,000 is the actual number, and that is already, they tell us that it already accounts for the effects of COVID. The number, not surprisingly, has gone down since the number that was given to us this year for 2020, and that's because people are driving less, because as Dave mentioned, this is based on the gas tax. So if people are on the road less, we're collecting less in revenue. And so in this fund, the main revenue is from what we receive from the state, and then interest earnings on that. And that's what determines what the expenditures in the fund are going to be. And the expenditures in the liquid fuels fund, it's very particular about what it can be used for. And we have to keep very detailed records of it, because we get audited each year on the liquid fuels expenses. Some of the bigger expenditures, you'll see operating supplies for snow, that's salt. We have a salt contract. We have a 2-year contract. It was good last year that it didn't snow much because that saved us a lot on overtime and wear and tear on the equipment. But unfortunately, we still had a requirement that we had to purchase a certain level of salt. And so we haven't made that purchase yet. We'll be doing it very shortly. And it's something we're locked into for next year as well. So there's not a ton that we can do this coming year with reducing that number. But we are going to be exploring other contract options because it is a state contract. So that's one of the bigger expenditures. Streetlights, our costs for the utilities, our PICO bills for the streetlights are also paid for out of the motor license fund. That's a number that has, even though we're more efficient since we've switched over to LED lights, the cost of electricity is still going up a little bit. So I don't think we're saving quite as much as we'd hoped, but certainly we have had a reduction in costs. And then the other big thing that comes out of liquid fuels is for road resurfacing. So each year when we do our road resurfacing program, the first expenditures that we have for the road program come out of liquid fuels. Any additional costs for road resurfacing lately have been coming out of our community enhancement fund because we've been receiving money from Aqua, kind of a payment in lieu of restoration. And we've been able to leverage that money and do more with it than Aqua would have done with its own restoration. So lately, over the past couple of years, we've been using the liquid fuels road resurfacing funds and the Aqua restoration funds to do the vast majority of our road resurfacing. So as David noted, we did want this to budget. So right now it is budgeted. Certainly you're not voting on this tonight, but I think the majority of this, majority of the work is out of the way. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of leeway in what we can do with the items on here.
No, Dave, the one thing I think we probably can do though is reduce that street lighting utilities expense just based on, it looks like we have it in there sort of as it had been in the past couple of years. And like you noted, we are saving some money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
we
maybe,
probably,
that's not going to make a huge difference, but I think we can take it down a little bit.
mm-hmm.
Dave, we'll look at that tomorrow, Doug, don't you think? We could do that tomorrow, take another look at it. Commissioner Kate's right, we should take a look at it. And
there's just a couple line items on there, and it maybe means another like half of a road or something like that in the scheme of things, but everyone loves to have their road resurfaced, so.
Every little bit helps.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so I think, people can take a look at that. If you have questions, ask me, Dave or David, but somewhat straightforward. We can use the funds for pretty limited things. The vast majority of them get allocated to road resurfacing, which we sort of talk about later once Charles ranks our roads. So next item, the MMO, we're actually going to talk about that later down in the bills list. Divot. Okay, so this is our rate stabilization. So we get some funds back from Divot. And as Dave noted, the current budget already reflects using the sort of credit and applying it to next year's, is that our healthcare or just our general insurance premium? And so do we need to vote on that, Dave, or it's just an item for discussion?
I think as long as the board is in agreement, I do have to notify Divot of the intention to use the rate stabilization fund. So the one that's on the screen currently, this is for the health trust. So the amount is $108,000. And again, this is a fund that the trust creates and then they distribute to reduce the drastic increases in the premiums from year over year. So for example, you can see from the 2020 premium, it went up $17,000. To be honest, I don't know how they decide what the total stabilization fund amount is going to be. The health trust does have its own board, so they determine that, and then they, I think, allocate it equally based on exposure, population, et cetera. And so for us, for the health trust, it was $108,000. And then for the liability, the property and liability trust is $8,900. So the health trust is a very sizable number, $108,000. And as Kate noted, that is currently reflected in the budget. So if we were to take this out, that would have a significant impact to the 2021 budget. And this is also going to be reflected in the 2021 budget, this 8942. So I think it would be good to just have the board agree to apply the stabilization.
Yeah, I mean, so I think in any case, right, it will come in as revenue. And so this is just sort of offsetting it. Otherwise, we're just going to have an increased expense and increased revenue as different line items, right? So it just, I think it's sort of.
And you could, again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, but you could put it off until 2022 and you would earn interest on it.
Okay. I mean, I think our common practice is to apply it, and I would suggest that makes the most sense, unless anyone else disagrees. All right. I think we can move on to the warrant list.
I think
Yeah.
Dave was saying you did want a motion. Is that correct, Dave? Did I understand that?
Yeah, I guess a motion wouldn't be a bad idea. I think just something to show that there was general agreement, if nothing else. So let's do a motion just to be safe.
Yeah,
Okay.
I tend to agree. If this is, elective, let's have a record of it. So.
Okay, so then I'll make a motion to apply the 2021 divot rate stabilization amount of $18,014 against the current year, the health trust premium in the amount of $108,806.
Second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Are we 7-0? Okay, warrant list.
Oh, sorry, Kate, just one more. And then the liability one as well that I have highlighted here, the 8942.
Okay, what are we applying that to? Because I don't have that in my notes.
Oh, sorry, that's the property and liability trust.
Okay, I guess we don't need to read that amount in.
If you could do the same kind of motion you just did. For
But where's the
health
full?
trust.
Where's the full amount? Because I don't.
Oh, if you can, I'm not sure if you can see it here on the screen. It's 8,942.
Yeah, but do I need to read it in what we're? That's the credit, right? Do I need to read in what we're applying it against?
You're applying it against the.
Still the 108.
Oh no, sorry. So on the health trust here, the premium was 600,000, and you're applying the 108,806, and I think that's what you approved there.
No, I read it in wrong then. So I read in the member discount then, or whatever that is, multi-trust discount. All right, so then we need to redo it. So I will make a motion to approve the 2021 divot. What is it? Rate stabilization of $108,806 against the 2021 annual premium of $600,480. And then can we do it together? And
I think you could. I think you could do them together, and I don't know that you need to read off the premium part. Just as long as you're saying the stabilization fund, you should be fine.
Okay, and to apply the rate stabilization fund of $8,942 against premiums as well. I don't know.
You got it.
All right.
Second. What she said.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries 7-0.
Real quick, did we retract the earlier motion, Dave? Sufficient for that, for the minutes?
Yes.
All right.
All right, so we unfortunately have some quirks in the bills this month. There was a little bit of an issue with when the AP bills list was run last month. It actually included things for this current month and it should not have been last month. And my understanding is some of the amounts were off a little bit. There just was an issue with running the report. And so we sort of need to do 2 AP bills lists this month. And some of the things are going to look familiar because they were approved last month, but we're just doing a clean one just to make sure we're all good and we don't have any issues at audit time. So the first thing you have in front of you is the AP. Is someone talking? Okay, the first thing we have in front of us is the AP bills list for August 27th. Okay, so the first item to talk about is asphalt care. This was charged to sewer capital. B&L, that's our normal monthly recycling fee. BFI Republic, noting that we're still under budget by about $13,000 there. General sewer service charge, I think next page, Steve. There was an issue with the lateral sewer at the highway garage, and that needed to be repaired. Goodyear is a charge for new tires for the leaf machines. McDonald's uniform, that is a uniform charge for the police, and it is over budget, but the chief, helped us point out that we were under budget for 2019. I guess there was an issue with not being able to order the uniforms we needed or something along those lines. So, the two sort of even out. We were under budget last year and a little over this year for, the same sort of uniforms we were expecting to purchase.
Kate, the issue is the uniforms were ordered in June and weren't delivered until January.
Okay, so just a timing difference.
Yes.
Okay, got it. So Michael's paving, that's a collapsed storm pipe under 300 Fairfield. Just Dave, can that be paid out of sewer capital? I had a note there on that one.
That was a storm sewer issue, not a sanitary sewer.
Okay, got it. So unfortunately, that one just does come out of the general fund. And so throughout this bills list, there are a bunch of charges related to the Sapovitz basketball courts. None of them all that expensive, but because these were sort of old charges, my question to Dave was like, why are we spending some money on basketball courts for the winter? I'm happy to spend money on them. I think it's a great thing to do, and none of them are very high, but it was just a weird timing to be doing that now. But these are actually sort of old charges, so that that sort of explains it all. And so, does anyone have any questions on that AP bills list? Okay, then I think we can move on to the September list. The first item is the All Traffic Solutions. That's the software needed for the speed trailer, and we did discuss that last time. Cabela's, that was the trail cameras to deal with some vandalism issues. Under $400, I think a good charge, and I think something that we did discuss last time as well. The Delphira charge was the furnace at the township building that we had talked about somewhat extensively a couple months ago and approved. With some help from Marty about, sort of being energy efficient there. There's a couple other things throughout here that are going to be reimbursed. I guess one of the AP cards got compromised. And so it looks like it told us about $345. Domino's, Level Up, Offer ID, and Stars. So not to worry about that. We're going to be reimbursed. And the Whitmer's Bulletproof Vests, that's 50% grant funded and 50% being reimbursed out of drug forfeiture funds. So thank you to the chief on that. It sounds like, a great thing for us to have and a great thing to be using drug forfeiture funds for. Does anybody have any questions on that list? All right, we can move on to the AP interims. Colonial Life Insurance, somewhat of a low charge, but it's paid for out of employee withholdings, so revenue in and out. The Commonwealth Title Report charge for $500. That was a title search for the Martha Burton Park that we renamed. And towards the bottom, I don't know how you say it, Rarig maybe, Rarig Pacific Company, a $4,300 charge for 75 recycling cans. We had some savings on the recycling side per budget, and so we decided to stock up on some cans because I think we were actually out of them. Then we need to move on to one separate interim bill that, I think we have to vote on this one, right, Dave? Or did we don't, I guess we can vote on it all together?
Yeah, just as you're doing the final motion.
Okay. So this is actually comes out of a separate bank account that we had to open up for one of our grants. Typically, we'll pay things for grants out of the general fund, but then do some internal accounting entries and get things onto the grant fund budgets. So for this particular grant, they did not want us to do that. We couldn't pay it out of the general fund. We had to open a separate bank account, and that's why this is treated separately. So this is for accredited environmental tech, and it is an inspection related to the Summit School, related to the asbestos. This is one, I think some people have been involved in this. It was, there were some issues with the amount that was charged, but it sounds like everything was worked out. And I think Matt Garson, you were involved in that, and Dave. So I think we're all comfortable with that charge at this point. Last is the AP bills list. You'll notice throughout there are several quarterly payments that were made, mostly to our funded organizations, but also a retainer for our zoning hearing board solicitor. This relates to the Center for Resolutions, Furnace Library, MPAA, the Leaper House, Historical Society, and the fire companies. There's also medical benefits paid out to Divot. I guess, is it on this page? Yeah. So the Environmental Alliance charge, that's the phase 1 environmental study that we had talked about a couple meetings back for the potential Bullens Lane acquisition. Environmental management, I think it's right below that. I just wanted to confirm with Dave that that was charged back to the resident, and he confirmed that it was. Glasgow is the next one. I wanted to just confirm where this was getting paid out of, and the bulk of it is coming out of liquid fuels. Some is coming from county liquid fuels, and then the rest from our aqua reimbursement. And so, just sort of if you're looking at that large charge, that's where all those funds are coming from. The suture, however you say it, that one is the charge that we had some discussion about, where we're essentially going to be paying Alan Myers directly for some of it and the rest to go to suture. I understand that we're waiting on a maintenance bond there. And so I don't know, do you want me to add that to like the one big motion, Dave, and just explain that it'll be sort of a split payment?
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we had discussed that before you joined, Kate.
Okay.
We're gonna either wait till we get the maintenance bond or pay out the balance, but hold back the retainage. And I'll work it out with their lawyer one way or the other.
Okay, so I don't need to do anything
Yeah,
specific?
I think, yeah, right. You can just keep it on the bills list, but we've already had a motion where we conditioned payment on one of those two things happening, so.
Okay. So the amount stays the same, just sort of
Yeah.
paying two different parties. The Arlene LaRosa charge, that's the zoning hearing board court reporter. Marino Corp, that relates to the Moore Road sidewalk project. And we've already received funds from PennDOT for that. So although it's an expense, we already have the funds for that. And Mark's Auto Repair, that's the motor was replaced in police car number 1. And so as the chief noted, I think that was the last meeting we were talking about this, and we had pushed back replacement of that car and unfortunately ran into an issue, which is sort of what happens when we wait too long to replace cars. And then the charge from New Holland Auto Group relates to the Dodge Durango that we already talked about. And Dave just has a note for us here that the old car, I think it's car 6, is going to be sold on Gov Deals. And that should cover the funds that we received from that, should cover some of the costs for upfitting it that the chief was talking about, sort of making it appropriate for police work, I understand. Then on the next, the last sort of unique thing we have here is ACH payments. I understand there's not really a way for us to easily reflect that on our normal bills list, so it's just on a separate page here. These relate to the MMO funds that we had received, and we already approved, I think it was a motion or a resolution a meeting or two ago to apply those payments to the non-uniform and the police pension plans. And so this is just the ACH transfer effectuating that. So taking the funds that we received and applying them as they need to apply to the different pension plans. So does anyone have any questions about any of that? All right, so get ready for the worst motion ever. Can you get me on the right pages, Steve?
Let's get ready to pull some teeth, people.
Oh my gosh.
Sure. Thanks everyone for bearing with us on this unique bills list this week.
All right, let me make this bigger for myself. So first, I will make a motion to approve the AP bills list in the amount of $69,206.99 related to the period August 2020. And a approval of the AP bills list for September 2020 in the amount of $60,359.58. The AP interim funds in the amount of $27,851.02. Our secondary AP interim bills for October 2020 in the amount of $6,825. Our AP bills list for the period October 2020 in the amount of $882,592.91. And an ACH transfer from payable to the Ameritrade account from, do I need to read those account numbers?
No, I don't think you need to read the account numbers.
Okay.
Just the amounts should be fine.
To the Ameritrade account ending in 628 in the amount of $68,933.66 related to state aid, $114,586.34 related to the township contribution, and a transfer to the Ameritrade account ending in 605 in the amount of $147,715 related to state aid and $414,044 related to the township contribution. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. And that is it for me.
Thank you very much, Commissioner McKenzie. And I think we are on to the manager's report with David Grady.
Great. I'll try to run through the manager's minute quickly here. So on October 7th, we had a blood drive here at the Township Building, and it was a very successful one. Give me a moment here while I pull up the information. They collected 65 pints of blood, which will go towards helping save the lives of about 195 local hospital patients. So very successful fund drive. The next one is scheduled for December 30th. So we look forward to having more fund drives, and we'll have more information distributed once you can begin signing up for that.
Dave, let me just say, and I know I saw Kate there as well, it felt very safe and clean and distanced and well maintained. And of course, the Red Cross was wonderful as always. But so please, in December, come on out.
Thanks, Micah. A couple other quick things related to the election. The ballot box has been installed at the Furness Library. It's on the side there, right off of Furness Lane. If anyone has any questions about exactly where to find it, please reach out to us or visit the website. The ballot box has been open since Tuesday, since this most recent Tuesday. There are cameras there, it's monitored, and the boxes are emptied daily, I believe. So it's a good, safe way to drop off your ballots. The voter services centers have been opened at Delaware County. Give me just one moment here while I find the information. But
Just
this
to throw out a
information,
pitch for our Furness Library Park, our Furness Library Dropbox. I dropped mine off on Tuesday and I got an email confirming that it had been received on Wednesday. So the system's definitely working. It's a safe place to vote. Highly encourage everyone to use that.
great, thanks, Max. So we have information here on our website. If you go into our news feed, it's titled Voting Information here. It's got information about the Delaware County Election Hotline, 610-891-VOTE, and that is available Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. and on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to noon. The Voter Services Centers, there's 3 of them in Media, Chester, and Upper Darby. We have the links here where you can find them. We also have the links here for the ballot drop box locations. We have the polling locations listed here on our website as well. Please note the voting locations have changed since the last election. So please check this out here. If you're unsure of where to go to vote, you can also call this number here, 610-891-VOTE, and you can give them your information and they will help you locate where to go to vote.
Hey, can I make one suggestion? There may be at least between 1 and 2 and 3 at the high school, they may be on different sides, either the lobby or the cafeteria, I believe. But anyway, if we could look into that, and if there is a difference, maybe we could update that.
Sure. I'll check this out. This was the list that I was given from the county representative, but I'll check that out and make sure.
I think 1, 2, and 3 are all at the high school. And maybe somebody on the meeting knows. I feel like 1 may be on the Providence roadside, and I'm sorry, no, 1 and 3. Right, I'm sorry, 1 and 3. It's given the Providence Road address, but I think that the voting location is on the back side of the school, so it's off of Brookhaven. And maybe a quick clarification: 2 is definitely at the middle school.
Okay, we'll get that clarified and update the website as necessary. Thanks, Micah. And that's all I had for the voting. There are some upcoming flu shot clinics. Obviously, if there's ever been a year to get the flu shot, 2020 is the year to do it. The flu shot clinics are going to be on October 19th. Well, that just passed. The 23rd, 26th, 28th, and 30th. The flyer was distributed earlier, and we did have this on our website, and we've shared it on social media as well. And then Aqua is going to be performing work up on Walker, Moylan, and Files area. That's actually, there's some emergency work happening tonight, but the bulk of the work is going to be starting on November 2nd. So Micah, I believe that only affects your ward, but there will be some impacts in the area, some light detours, and that if there's any major disruptions from that, we will keep you notified. And that's all I have for the manager's minute. Micah, I think you're muted.
Thank you. I still have kids yelling outside of their bedrooms. Anybody call in for public comments during that whole time? To make sure that we...
No.
Awesome. Anybody else have an addition to this legislative session? All right, hearing none, we will adjourn the legislative session. Our budget session, as discussed earlier with Commissioner McKenzie, is off for next week. So next time we will meet will be the budget session in the first Thursday in November. Thank you very much, all, and have a good night.
Night, everyone. Have a great night.